Good morning. This is Pat O'Connell. I'm calling to order the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission regular open meeting. It is Thursday, February 20th, 10 a.m. We're here in the Bochum building, and it's also being broadcast live on YouTube. So Mr. Cameron, please call the roll.
Commissioner Nybert, Commissioner O'Connell,
Here.
Commissioner Aguilera. Present. All commissioners that are present. You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures. Thank you both. Commissioners, we have the agenda got posted Monday. My understanding is at a minimum, we should move consent item number 8 from consent to regular. Are there any other changes to the agenda?
Nothing else from me, Chair.
Okay, so I propose we'll move consent item number 8, which is case 2400273 to item number 1 on the regular action. And I move that we change the agenda that way.
Second.
Mr. Cameron.
Commissioner Nybert,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner O'Connell,
Yes.
Commissioner Aguilera. Aye. The motion to adopt the agenda as amended passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you. Mr. Rodriguez, do we have anybody registered for public comment? Yeah, sorry, I surprised you. There's just very few people in the room with us today, so. Did you want to provide public comment? Come on. Okay, so Mr. Rodriguez, sorry, I didn't hear you.
Sorry about that, Mr. Chair. No, we don't have anyone online for public comment.
Okay, great, thank you. Announcements, Office of General Counsel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one, which is to retract my announcement. I think it was from last time or maybe the meeting before, where we were talking about the April 1st meeting, or the April 3rd meeting, sorry, that we were going to change to April 1st. In the spirit of April Fool's Day, April Fools, we're actually not changing it to April 1st. We're going to have it on April 3rd, but we're going to start at 10:30 to accommodate the commissioner's schedule.
Great, thank you. And as we get closer, we'll repeat that just so nobody logs in at 10 and wonders where we are. Next up, just commissioner announcements. We've got a couple opportunities to watch the commission work between now and the next meeting, which will be March 6th. There's a P&M financing case. That's case 2500012 UT. And there will be a hearing on that. I think that's next week. So if you're interested in refinancing debt, that's an interesting hearing and kind of fundamental to what the commission does. So again, information for that is available online. And then we're gonna, as part of our goal to get out in New Mexico so we can hear from the people that are most affected directly by the work that we do. We're going to be traveling to Farmington again. So on March 3rd, that's Monday, 4 o'clock at Farmington City Hall, we're going to have a public comment hearing on P&M's requested PPAs and energy storage agreements. And there's also a CCN in there. It's case number 24-00271 UT. At least one of these resources is in the school district that's most directly affected by San Juan shutting down. So that's why we're going to Farmington, and would love to see as many folks from the community that will be affected by those projects, if they are approved and get built, to join us for that session. So again, Information for that is available on our webpage if you heard it and you're interested and want to go join us there. So any other announcements? Nope. Okay, so next up on the agenda, we've got minutes from January 23rd, 2025 regular open meeting. Commissioners, did you have any changes to those draft minutes?
I had one very minor change that I had inputted into the board effect. It was like a deleting an extra space or something small like that.
Yeah.
That's it.
Then I'll move for approval of the January 23rd open meeting minutes that as edited in board effect.
Second,
Commissioner Nyberg,
Yes,
Commissioner O'Connell,
Yes,
Commissioner Aguilar.
aye.
The motion to adopt the January 23rd, 2025 regular open meeting minutes as amended passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
great, thank you. Next up is consent action items. We've got 8 cases on the consent agenda. Agenda was posted with 8, but just reminder, case 24273, we'll hear that next in the regular action section. So commissioners, did you have any questions or discussion on any of the consent action items?
no, sir.
Okay, seeing none, then I will move for approval of the potential orders in the consent item agenda.
Second,
Mr. Cameron?
Commissioner Nyberg,
Yes,
Commissioner O'Connell,
Yes.
Commissioner Aguilar.
aye.
The motion to adopt the potential orders for all the consent action items as amended passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you. Okay, so first up, Mr. Gedko, we have case 24273, petition for variance from the community solar rule from Cecil Power. Floor is yours, Mr. Gedko.
Good morning, Commissioners. The docket that is before you, as you stated, 2400273 is the matter of the petition of Cecil Power LLC for a variance from and under Rule 17.9.573.12 NMAC. Cecil seeks a variance that would allow it to move its Ravensol Community Solar Project from the site that it submitted with its RFP bid to a different site that is on an adjacent parcel of land owned by the same landowner. You have 2 draft orders before you. One draft order denies the petition on the basis that the variance would not be in the public interest and would not achieve the purpose of the community solar rule, as it would undermine the competitive selection process established in the community solar rule. Additionally, it explains that incorrect information provided by the petitioner is sufficient basis for denial under Rule 1.2.2.40, which requires in part that the petition describe the situation that necessitates the variance. The other draft order grants the petition on the basis that it meets the requirements of Rule 1.2.2.40. And that granting the variance achieves the purpose of the community solar rule and is in the public interest because it will ensure that a highly rated project will be developed in an underserved community and will be able to provide the benefits that resulted in its selection through the community solar program's bid selection process. The bases for the granting are certain particular facts regarding this relocation, which include the use of the same interconnection point, the same landowner, Cecil's legally binding site control over the new parcel of land, and a lack of detriment to other selected community solar projects. With that brief introduction, I stand for questions.
Thank you. Any questions, comments?
Mr. Chair, I don't have any questions, but do have some comments on the alternatives, excuse me, that we have here before us. So for the, so I support the order that would grant the variance. And the fifth prong of our variance standard is, I think, really the one that is important here, about especially about the public interest. I see all of these as being met and want to explain why I think this is in the public interest. A few of the things that I'm considering here is that first, this is request that is limited to only 400 meters. So this is a situation where upon further studies, the developer was made aware that the site is in a flood zone. And I think we can argue about, you know, whether that was there was good faith there in terms of the studies that were made prior to submitting the bid. And I think ultimately there was. So that's one thing that I'm considering. And so the result then would be to move this project to the 400 meters from where it is currently being proposed. And it would not change the point of interconnection. There's no evidence here that any other customer would be harmed, and site control will still be maintained by the developer here. Those things are all things that I consider when thinking about, well, what precedent is this going to create if another developer in the future wants to move from one site to another. I think there are valid reasons why we require site control and why, you know, it needs to, that site control needs to match as it needs to match as stated here in the variance request, because you don't want a developer to say, to just give any site and in order to be able to I don't know, get a higher rating when they're being selected or considered for selection. In this case, however, I think there has been good faith shown here. And given the limited circumstances, I think that precedent is good to create, because I don't think that we want to be so strict that we wouldn't want to allow a project to ever move for any reason. So just wanted to, you know, kick it off with those thoughts and explain why I support the granting the variance request.
Thank you. Anything, Commissioner Nybert?
Mr. Chair, you know, I looked at both orders and we of course had the order denying that was on the consent agenda, and it made sense to me to deny it. And I think one of our jobs and one thing we're grappling with in the rulemaking process is to make sure that the community solar developers are on a level playing field. And when they submit their proposals that are then evaluated through a process, it goes through that process and they are ranked, and then those with higher scores are then receiving the limited number of slots that are available for community solar projects to be built. And so this presents to the commission an interesting case, because I think we have to ensure that the playing field is level for all to compete within the system that's been created. And this commission fairly recently said that, in fact, I'll quote, it says, the community solar's rules requirement that bids demonstrate legally binding site control would be rendered meaningless if projects were unilaterally allowed to change site locations after being selected, as projects could submit bids for the purpose of being selected and then construct the selected system on alternative locations. And it goes on with some other language that this commission set forth. In that particular case, we did grant a variance, but in that case, it was due to the state land office and representations that were made to the community solar developer that indicated that they would approve or they would allow a solar facility to be built at a specific location. And then when it came down to it, they said, no, there's cultural resources, you have to move it. It was through no fault of the developer. And so we granted a variance, and I certainly see the wisdom in doing that. In this case, I'm a little concerned because you have a site location that the developer says things weren't known, but I've grown up in a part of the state that has playa lakes. This area seems to be similar, and it's quite obvious where those are. And I looked at Google Earth yesterday, and the location looks like, even on Google Earth on a computer, you can see that there could be some issues with respect to this site location. So I'm not buying some of the arguments that the developer is making in requesting this variance. And I think that the burden is on the developer to establish why the variance must be granted. And in this case, in light of the circumstances, it seems to me that just moving it, and albeit 400 meters, quarter mile, albeit doesn't change the purpose of the place of interconnect. If we want to draw the line there, fine. I'm fine drawing the line there, but we have to draw a line somewhere. And it seems to me that the burden's on the developer to prove why this variance should be granted, and I don't see it like in the other case where it was somebody else's fault. I see this case as being the developer's fault, maybe not doing sufficient due diligence, maybe being quick on the trigger, but I am not convinced that the facility cannot be built at the location cited. 4 to 6 feet of water. I think it's a number of feet of water that may be under this facility from time to time. But it seems to me that that's an easily handled condition at this location. They can simply raise these panels up above any potential flood area and conduct their operation without significant interference. I see it more as a mechanism to save money and to they realize at this point, oh, it's going to cost us more money, more concrete, more steel to raise the panels up. And I think they were selected at one location. And in this case, I don't see that we should grant the variance for those reasons. If we, there are some allegations in the record that reflect that there's wind shear. Having grown up in eastern New Mexico, I'm not sure I detected much different wind shear between the top of my head and standing on the top of the ladder. But the wind blows, it's within that distance, maybe even 20 feet off the ground. The wind's not going to be demonstrably different at those levels. Now get up 150, 200 feet where the wind turbine blades are, I buy the argument, but not that close to the ground. So I think I think if we want to move forward with this, we ought to at least investigate or have staff investigate that one issue. But for me, we need to send a clear message of where the line is, and this is a good case to send that message one way or the other, whether we grant or deny, but it ought to be very clear in whatever order comes out of this commission, the exact reasons why we're putting the line at this point, either through the denial of this or through the granting of this variance. We have to be very clear. And I'll just say, I don't think either order as written now provides that insight. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Never. You make several good points and hit on some things that I'm also considering, but failed to mention. So in thinking about what would occur if we deny this variance, and this is something that I spent some time thinking about. I don't think that we could assume that this project drops out, right? Because they're not saying it's impossible for us to operate at our current site. You're correct that they have explained that they would need to raise the panels. And so in thinking through that, what does that mean? I think it means that the project is going to be more expensive. And likely the consumers are going to bear some of that additional. I mean, we don't know for sure, maybe the developer does, but probably not. I would say that likely some of those costs would go on. And so then I'm thinking, well, then why wouldn't we allow it? If nobody else is being harmed, why would we not be okay with this move if it's not affecting somebody else and if it's going to help the project and help the subscribers?
Mr. Chair, if I may respond, I don't know that the cost would go to the subscribers or whether the developer would just simply have to bear more cost in building the facility, but that should have been known from day one. That's part of their bid process. But the parties who could also be harmed, if the playing field's not level, then the party that's harmed is the next person in line. And as I understand it, there's more people in line than there are slots available. And so the person that's really harmed is the person that is the first person in line after the requisite number of slots have been taken. And so that person would be harmed because they can't build their facility at whatever location because this person submitted their project at a specific location And now for whatever reason, whether it's to save cost on construction or whatever other reasons, wants to move it to another location that was not in their package when they were bidding on it with respect to all the other bidders of solar, community solar projects in the state of New Mexico, or this one within the PNM territory. So that's my real concern is this commission, I think, has got to make sure that not only are rules that are being developed now, but I think this case that we have a level playing field. And like I mentioned in the other case, through no fault of the developer, we granted a variance. In this case, I don't see the other party's presence. I don't see things not being known. Maybe they weren't actually known because they didn't do their due diligence, but anybody that did their due diligence on this very well should have known that, hey, here's a barren patch of land. Why is there no vegetation on this land? Well, because occasionally it's inundated with water, like many playa lakes in the state of New Mexico. That should have been detected, but apparently it wasn't until months later, maybe a year later, that, oh, look, we may be subject to flooding. We need to move this. You know, I'm somewhat skeptical about the process up front by this particular developer at this particular location, because an on-site visit should have said, hey, we'd rather be over there than where it was bid upon. And that's where I'm having the hard time.
Yeah, Commissioner, I don't disagree with anything you've said. I think all of those are good points, and I agree that we need to ensure that there is a level playing field. I don't know that there's any indication that if the developer had proposed the site they're proposing now, 400 meters away, that anybody else would have jumped ahead of them. In other words, I'm not sure that this change would have actually resulted in any kind of different selection. So level playing field, we certainly need to consider that, and we can't, and I agree also that we need to, if we grant this variance, we need to be clear about where the line is. What are we going to be okay with? And that's really what I see in this case, is what are we going to be okay with? That's, you know, when I put it all together, I'm thinking, do we want to be so rigid that we're not going to allow any kind of changes? And then what message does that send about building community solar or really other things in New Mexico? If, you know, if we make a mistake or, you know, see some kind of potential improvement, I'm not sure that I could come to this commission and ask them, because they're probably going to say no. And then, do I want to be in New Mexico at all? Is kind of how I'm thinking about this. And so there are situations here where I would prefer to say no, if they were moving the point of interconnection, if they were suggesting something that is going to increase the cost for other customers, or delay other projects. And that's really what it comes down to me. Is this more common sense and nobody else is being injured as a result? Or is somebody being injured? Yeah, so I think that this case is fascinating. Clearly, it's important in terms of figuring out what lines we want to draw for potential future cases.
Mr. Chair, I would say that, the message we would be sending if we deny the variance is that, number one, parties, we need to ensure parties have a level playing field. Number two, I would say that, we are very concerned with their due diligence process and that they need to, they need to be careful as they propose these, because we're not going to generally grant a movement of location unless there, in my opinion, unless there's something that is of no fault of the developer. If there's conditions that exist that through no fault of the developer need to be addressed, as in the prior case. I'm certainly amenable to that, but we're not the ones that scored or judged these projects. Somebody else did all that. I don't know what their thought process was judging one versus another, but I do know when they looked at this application, it was for a specific location with a specific interconnect. And now one of those two things have changed. And I don't know whether that would have had a tremendous bearing on the scoring of the project or not. Part of the limitations we have, we don't have people that can answer these questions for us, but we don't know whether that would have had some impact. And I agree, 400 meters isn't that far. It's a little over a quarter of a mile. But the fact remains, all these parties are competing to put these projects in. And there is a person that is out there who did not get awarded a project because this person took one of the slots, and there's a limited number of slots. And so, you know, there is a real impact. And the other thing I would say is that, you know, the other message is that we are really grappling with the issue of making sure that everybody, when they submit their application, that's their application, they're responsible for it. And if they have mistakes, if they have problems with it, it's their own fault. It's not our fault, but somebody else will take that slot if they didn't do their due diligence, if they didn't fill out the paperwork correctly. And while that may be a harsh reality, I don't see it as being one that's negative in this context, because we have a limited number of slots. We have many people that are competing for those slots. And at least currently, we have more projects that want to be online than are going to be available online due to the statutory limitations and maybe utility constraints as well. So if I saw something in this application that indicated it's somebody else's fault, I'd be with you. I just don't see it. And so I'm advocating that we dismiss, although I'm not advocating for the final order as it's written.
Excellent discussion. Maybe I should weigh in at some point, but first question, Mr. Gedko, what is the deadline for ruling on this variance?
There is not a deadline for ruling on a petition for a variance.
Okay, because I wholeheartedly agree with Commissioner Nybert that the richness of the discussion that has already happened, and we don't know what the final outcome is going to be. So I think we're going to need a different order than the two we have in front of us. We can talk about how best to do that when we get there. But next thing is, again, similar to what both of you have expressed. I agree with almost everything I've heard. It really comes down to what's the decision point, right? And so starting with the developer, whether a project's in a flood zone is a come on man level mistake. You know, it's pretty fundamental. And it can be solved by a site visit. It can be solved by looking at a map. So does not speak well of the bidder that happened. The next thing that I think is important here is, and good news for you, Commissioner Nybert, you don't have the last 2 years of dealing with community solar project variance questions. Over that period of time, we found that the RFP was lacking in a few aspects. And frankly, we've got a rulemaking that we started a while ago and lots of reasons for that rulemaking. But for me, one of them was let's incorporate lessons learned into the RFP process, because yeah, we're working with the first tranche of community solar, but assuming community solar is successful, there's going to be another. So it's kind of not a do or die situation in terms of this is your last chance. And one of the big areas where the RFP needs work is it blew my mind, frankly, that developers didn't have to make some representation on what their projects were going to cost. So if there was that discipline of what your project's going to cost, maybe somebody would have looked at a flood map, you know, so because the things you're describing, yeah, you can work around it and keep it in the same location, but it means it's going to cost more. And that the other side of that coin is one of the beauties of the RFP is it leaned into this is community solar, right? So projects were picked based on potential value to the community where they were located. So nobody thought about how expensive things were going to be, but they did think about what's the value of having a project in this town, or are there any other aspects that the developers promised that are of value that meet the law for community solar. So that's why these have been hard, right? Because they were picked for the community part of community solar, not for the solar part of community solar, right? And not building a project that's going to work. And then I really like what you were talking about, needing to draw a line somewhere. For me, it was thinking about what do we regulate and what do we not regulate? And where the rubber meets the road is the interconnection. We have an interconnection rule. This project is going to have to deal with that process. So whether the project moved or not is really a interconnection rule issue, not a community solar rule issue, I think. I think it hasn't moved because point of interconnection hasn't changed. So electrically, it's the same thing it would have been with or without it. So, and I don't want to get into the level of doing location permits for 5 megawatt projects. I mean, we might, but let's not start that here, I guess, is the kind of thing. So in the world of what are we doing for regulation? For me, it's just the concept that regulation is perspective. So we could tell people for the next RFP what to do by denying the variance on the current RFP, or we can fix it in the rulemaking. And then similar to site selection process that we heard last week from the economic development crowd, these projects are facing a lot of risks. They've not interconnection risk. We got to report some of them are like $18 million for interconnection on a 5 megawatt project. I don't see how that works. So those are the kind of things that developers are working through. I just don't feel like piling on with denying the variance request when knowing that they're in a world where they got lots that they're dealing with. And there's other reasons probably more important than it moved 400 meters that will determine success of that particular project. So anyway, that's how I got to thinking in favor of granting the petition for variance, but you sure made me think about that again today, because you reinforced some of the things that I thought were super important, like flood zone. Come on,
Can I add one thing, Chair?
Yeah, please.
So the issue of the developer here doing due diligence, or really all developers doing due diligence, is also a very good point and an important one, because and I think that also starts with our rules and what are our requirements, because if our application fee is low, $1,000, is it 1,000 or 2,000? Can't remember. I think it's 1,000.
I think that's correct.
Yeah. Then I'm probably just gonna submit a lot of applications and see what sticks. If the application fee is higher, which we have an opportunity to discuss in a couple of weeks, then as a developer, well, it's more expensive. I'm probably gonna do more work ahead of because if it's $10,000, I'm probably not gonna submit 15 projects anymore. I might submit 3 or 5, right? Anyway, that's another thing to consider. It's interesting because you're right, they should be doing their due diligence. But if it's so easy to just submit a speculative project, why not? Right? Like, why do your due diligence all the way? Why not just, have more projects and see if any of them get selected? And I'm not saying that's, all what's going on, but I do think, I guess the message I'm trying to explain is it matters also what incentives we're creating.
Okay, so we've explored this fascinating issue, I think, pretty well. And if anybody's got anything else to say, let's say it now. One thing I'm taking away from this is we need a different order than what we have available to us right now. And because of the depth and thoughtfulness, frankly, of discussion here, I don't want to try to write an order at the table what we've done in the past. So I guess first question for me is, do we want to decide on this petition for variance, yes or no, today? And if we do, then we know the one order we need to write. Or do we want to ask Mr. Gecko to come back with 2 other orders to, I mean, I'm just exploring possibilities. My recommendation would be, let's just decide variance, yes or no, and then set up a process to draft the order. If we do that, what we've done in the past with that is just pick one of the 3 of us to work with Mr. Gecko to get the final order written. If we're gonna say yes to the variance, I would recommend Commissioner Aguilera. If we're gonna say no, I would recommend you to do that. So that's something that's available to us. Other is, let's just ask Mr. Gecko to draft 2 more orders, and we'll take it up next in 2 weeks.
Mr. Chair, the other concern that I had was this developer, in fact, maybe I'd ask a question, Mr. Gecko. This developer, this isn't their only project in the state, is it?
No, they submitted 15 bids and they were selected for 6 projects.
And so the analogy of throwing something on the wall and seeing what sticks kind of resonates with me with this one, because it does seem like that may be what happened. And this is not a mom and pop outfit. This is a company who knows the process. And they've made statements in here that frankly, I was a little bit surprised with. The wind shear statement is shocking to me. They attested, presumably under oath, that was a problem. and yet, I'm not buying it. And so if we were going to look at this, I'd like to see what staff would have to say about that issue. Are they just saying things to say things? Or is it based on actual facts? Again, the difference between 8 feet and maybe 15 feet. I don't think the power of the wind is going to be substantially different between those levels. And yet they have statements like that. They had statements in their initial application that caused me a little bit of concern as well. So, you know, I just didn't get the frankness that I would have expected in this case from the developer. And maybe that has altered some of my other thinking on it. But I am very concerned about making sure that all the developers, when they submit their bids for these projects, that they are on an equal playing field. And if somebody's able to just throw things at the wall and see what sticks, and not do the upfront work that maybe somebody else lower in their queue has done, then have we really done our job in making sure that the playing field's level and entry is really awarded on merit, not just, well, we'll see if it sticks, and if not, we can move it a few 100 feet and get a variance. I just a little uneasy about some of that stuff.
Right. And all the developers, though, were working with the same rules. They weren't the only ones who submitted a lot of projects. So others had and did avail themselves of that opportunity to do that as well. Do you recall, Mr. Gedko, how many applications we received?
Don't hold me to this, but the number 300 comes to mind.
Okay, so entertaining suggestions on how we'd like to proceed. Sounds like add to the list of things we've talked about, another request for information.
Yeah, and
not that that's mutually exclusive from any other thing we choose.
yeah, I just, I don't know if the suggestion was to have staff check, but that makes me feel uncomfortable, because that makes me think that now we're doing the work for the developer here, and that's not our responsibility. You know, they should be doing that work. I think if it's between like sending, asking staff to evaluate these and doing a physical site visit, I think then that's where you end up in denying the petition, I think, because it's not our job to do that due diligence. I certainly agree that we need to, and I think this conversation shows that we need to find the delineation, especially if we were to grant the variance, because we want to make sure we're properly communicating what is okay and what is not, and what level of due diligence we're expecting. Even if this one is granted, I think you're right, Commissioner Nyberg. I see the same things in here. There are a few instances that just cause me to question, well, is this actually fully truthful? But I also then come back to, well, really, what would I be okay with in the future? And if somebody else came and said, hey, we got this site and we realized that this other one here is available and it's going to be a lot cheaper for us. would we say no to that move? Yeah. I mean, I think it makes sense to say yes, but if assuming, again, same point of interconnection, hey, it's only a quarter mile or less, and nobody else is going to be delayed, nobody else's costs are going to go up. So,
Yeah, and to that point, we have a portfolio of projects that are on the short list. It's not this one project for the first one at the top of the short list, because who knows how many that were awarded will proceed. And so again, I really think just from what we regulate and what we don't, the interconnection rule is where the line gets drawn for me. So that's why I'm in favor of granting the variance, just knowing that if they missed this, they probably missed something else. Whether the project gets across the line or not, there are other reasons it won't. So it's not, I don't think of it as a binary that this one project is unfair to whoever is the top of the short list. There's a portfolio of projects, they've all got risks. Will all of them proceed? Kind of don't think so.
Mr. Chair, if it's the point of interconnect that becomes the demarcation line, the line in the sand, so to speak. I could think of some scenarios where the location as approved, it's not this case, but the location that's approved is owned by party A, but all of a sudden the developer finds that party B over here is willing to cut a better deal and actually save people money. Do we grant the variance there to allow that movement just because it saves the developer some cost, even though their agreement was with party A? And if you've read some of those contracts really don't provide much for the landowner until something gets built. Many of them don't provide for anything for the landowner until something gets built. And so, if we draw the line there, then we could have a lot of shifting, because the neighbor next door says, oh, it's coming in, but if I undercut it by X dollars, he'll put it on me and I'll get the revenue instead of my neighbor. This case, fortunately for us, it's the same owner, but I'm just wondering if that's the line, what do we do with some other fact scenarios, and do we cause some problems there?
No, I hear you on that. But that's not a question that's unique to community solar. And another thing you've been spared over the last 2 years is dealing with our interconnection rule. So suggestions for how to proceed.
If we grant this variance, I'm happy to go back and think about how we could more clearly explain what line we're creating here. There are a lot of factors. I mean, I think the point of interconnection is one. I think that it's limited to 400 meters is another. I think if we're talking about 20 miles, then I think you're also talking about not being in the same community that you have a deal. I think not affecting other projects in sort of the same queue is important. Not delaying them, not increasing their costs. So I think it's more than just the point of interconnection, but I think the point of interconnection is important, because if you're changing the point of interconnection, then you're also probably likely changing the network upgrades that are needed, and you're affecting other other customers. If you're changing the size of the project, for example, that also might affect other people. So I guess I wouldn't be in favor of asking OGC to write 2 orders. I'd rather make a decision today, and then have 1 order. And sorry, was there a comment?
I have one concern.
Okay.
Not all of the reasons that have been discussed in this discussion for laying out the parameters of when a variance is granted or not are in the current orders. Could a situation arise where one member of this commission that might vote in favor can't get settled with the other commissioners on exactly what those parameters are? And if you can't, have we put the cart before the horse in that we've said, yes, we're going to grant it, and then we're in a situation where, shoot, we can't come to consensus on all these fine little tweaks that we're trying to do. And in that sense, I think it may be a little bit safer measure to say, work on the order. We know which way it's likely to go, but make sure that we can tie it and button it up and then come back with it. That's just a concern expressed for me that I'm feeling right now, and you all are obviously in charge.
Mr. Chair, I would offer this, if you're leaning one way or the other, then, we could instruct, Mr. Gedko to, work with, as you suggested, one of us to flange out an order and then have that brought up at the next meeting or whenever to finally approve it, but we'd each have our input on where those lines are in the interim. And really the ball, I'm looking at this, the ball's in your court as to which way you're leaning, and just kind of let us know. And I told Mr. Gedko yesterday, I could vote for this variance. But I have, tremendous concerns about some of the stuff I see in the materials. But I can still vote for it because frankly, 400 meters is not that far, and as the points have already been made, it's not significantly different. I still worry about the level playing field, but I'll get over that. So just if you could indicate that, then I think we just instruct Mr. Gedko to work with me if you're leaning this way, or work with Commissioner Aguilera if you're leaning the other way, and then we all get to see what they come up with before we vote on it at the next meeting.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I'll say I am leaning towards granting the variance, and something else that just came up that I don't think it determinative. It isn't something I'd put in a rule, but when I think about the things we have allowed to move under variance, and you described the situation well, we had the same land. So that's another, I don't know that goes in the rule, but it's something that resonated with me just now. And then, so anyway, yeah, I'd be, based on discussion today, I'd say, could we just ask Commissioner Aguilera to work with Mr. Gedko and see if we can have an order we can all vote on in 2 weeks. And then another point, and welcome again to the commission. When for 2 years, I've been saying things like flange out an order. And apparently there's a committee that's writing those things down. So they'll confront me with them later. So I'm delighted that I'm not the only one who will say things like flange out an order anymore. Thank you for that.
Mr. Chair, could I make one other statement?
Yep.
I am concerned about parties who just make some statements that are probably not supported and frankly don't even make common sense. And I'll just say if I see affidavits like that, I'm gonna point them out. And I really think that we ought to consider credibility of the parties when they make statements that probably are not supported by fact. And so and this case pointed some of that out in my mind. That's kind of what drove me to the question of having staff look at whether that statement was factually supportable. It wasn't to go do a site visit. It was just see what the physics are with respect to wind at closer levels to the surface of the earth. And because I did not buy the wind shear argument at all. So just general statement to all parties that appear before us. That's stuff that I'll be looking at.
Yeah, and none of that is unwarranted with this application. I do have to say that, you know, I talked about the same concerns with Mr. Getgo. And I do think those concerns have a place in the order as well. And just separately, one thing I've mentioned before, because this is not the first time we kind of deal with this, is that we maybe should consider a good faith prong to our variance request. Is this submitted in good faith? Because I think this is a perfect example of when that might come to when it is relevant. So.
Yeah, all good points, and I'll join you in your last comment. I mean, just there have been a few things over the last few months where I've wondered if the folks in the room are saying what they really believe or what they're really doing. And this, if we want to work collaboratively to move things forward, veracity is important. So we'll add to your comments with that. Okay, so summary, I think where we're at now is Commissioner Aguilera and Mr. Gidko are going to work together on new final order granting petition for variance. And then if new information comes to light, then suddenly it looks like maybe we should go another way. One of my big things is the commission has to always be willing to listen. So just because we've issued that instruction today, I mean, I think odds are good that's where we're going to land. But if somebody thinks of something else, find something else. Work with Mr. Gecko on it, I would say. Okay, so are we satisfied with the longest discussion of a consent item ever and ready to move to regular? Yeah, longest discussion with no resolution of a consent item ever. Thank you, Mr. Gecko.
Well, technically, we took it out of consent.
Well, okay. I was fine with it being on consent a week ago when we set the agenda, but
And then you flopped on me.
yeah, I flopped on you. Try to keep listening. Again, thank you, Mr. Gecko.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Next up, the Terminator. Robert Lundeen and NOPR on energy efficiency savings targets. We had a workshop on that just to start the new year, and that workshop has culminated in the discussion today. So floor is yours, Mr. Lundeen.
Good morning, commissioners. So make this quick. The Efficient Use of Energy Act requires this commission to adopt new energy savings targets for the 2026 to 2030 time period, applicable only to electric utilities. So that is the main impetus for this rulemaking and the proposed rule in NOPR order that I've prepared for you today. As always, when we open a rulemaking on a rule, it's best to also, take the opportunity to make whatever changes to the rule we want to make, and to make general improvements that need to be made. So the proposed rule you'll see has many red line edits, most of them small edits and edits for structure and format and grammar. But I will describe to you quickly the highlights of the substantive edits. So after impaneling a working group and receiving proposed new energy savings targets, the commission, or in this proposed rule, agrees with the working group to continue the 5% energy savings goal for the 2026 to 2030 period. That is similar to what has been required in the past since the EU EA was amended in 2017. Another highlight of this rule is that it would contain provisions for decoupling. Decoupling was added to the EU EA in 2019, and the commission has had one litigated case on it and a few other kind of declaratory order dockets, as well as an appeal. And the Supreme Court has opined on parameters for decoupling and requirements for the commission to consider. So we have requirements for decoupling contained in two places now, in the court's opinion and the statute. So this is a good opportunity to aggregate those into one place and have them in the rule. Additionally, the decoupling language in this rule has some kind of additional clarity given by or proposed by Commissioner O'Connell, if you want to discuss that today. Additionally, the proposed rule would increase the minimum spend requirement for low-income programs from 5% to 10%. This is another proposal of the working group. 5% is the minimum required by law, but it can be more. Additionally, the proposed rule would provide previously kind of silent procedures for annual reconciliation, filing, and review procedures. And like I mentioned, there's lots of other just little edits throughout, but those are the highlights, and I'll stand for questions.
Yeah, thank you for that presentation. And then I'll go ahead and talk about my additional idea that came about after we had the workshop early in January. The working group, first of all, reiterate thanks to them. Second of all, they had a proposal for increasing the incentive. But in your comments about the proposal, it was hard to see why, right? So they said, yeah, let's raise the incentive. Didn't have a why. So I was thinking, because we're including decoupling in this rule, we can lean into the why. You might want a higher incentive. So decoupling plus the higher incentive, and then the other really leans into exactly what the law says, right? That it provides public utilities an opportunity to earn profit on cost-effective energy efficiency and load management resources that, with satisfactory program performance, is financially more attractive to the utility than supply-side resources. So what does decoupling do? It eliminates the disincentive. A greater incentive, no question that we're meeting what the policy of the law is. And then the other wrinkle to it is, frankly, the struggles that SPS has had with the mandated level of spend. So if you're a utility that's decoupled, you can go for the bigger incentive. And if you're still unable to spend the legally required amount of money, then that becomes easier variance for me to grant, because I know that you're aligned around achieving all of the cost-effective energy efficiency. So, and then other point to make on that, not disturbing the requirement that cost effectiveness be shown before you proceed. We're still going to do measurement verification. So why lean into this is, just by definition, we're pursuing cost effective. The old cliche is the least expensive megawatt hour is the one you didn't have to generate. And then really the clincher for it for me was listening to the presentations last week in economic development. Because if we can pursue energy efficiency, it's not going to prevent the fact that the system needs to expand and new investments are made. But what it can do is two things: free up space on the existing system for new loads to show up. So it's not just expanding on the margins, but it will help create opportunities on the existing. And then, of course, my other idea just popped out of my head. So, so anyway, that's why I proposed those to be included in the rule, and they're in addition to what the working group proposed. So I thought it'd be worth it to describe it. And again, this is NOPR, so we're going to have comment, responses, and process. So it isn't the rule. I really thought, hey, pull together the working group's idea with what the law says and include that in the decoupling section. So anyway, that was my idea.
Yeah. I don't have much in terms of comments. Also want to thank the working group and Mr. Lundin and the staff here for the work that they've done in helping us get to this point. I think the working group did a lot of good work and helped us get further ahead than we would be without the work that they did. And so I don't have any additional comments. Thank you for yours, Chair.
I don't have any significant comments, more questions for my own learning of the process. I'm very familiar with commenting on rulemakings elsewhere, and in our order we have a public hearing. We have written comments due after the public hearing, and then we don't permit reply comments, and I'm just trying to understand the process. Do we not just have one comment period that maybe ends at the end of the hearing, and you get all the comments, and then we deal with the comments that are submitted? But this is more elaborate than that. And then my other question is on paragraph I of the order. It says written comments recommending modifications, etc., shall include draft rule language necessary to effectuate the recommendation. So if somebody wants to comment on that aspect of the rule, we're requiring them to also do that. What happens if they just want to comment on the rule but not have the language? Are we going to disregard that comment, or why are we using the word shall and not may? Because it seems to me that their comment has more validity if they do that, but why are we forcing them to do that? I know why we might want it, but when you make comments, you're making comments, and we're going to consider them whether they have anything of substance behind them or not. We're going to read them and consider what people have to say about it.
Those two questions there. I'll address your second question first.
Okay.
With providing an example. So in commenting on the working group's draft proposal, one of the stakeholders, WRA, Western Resource Advocates, made the comments that the commission should adopt demand saving targets for gas utilities or for all utilities. But they didn't provide any specific language along with that. So it puts the commission in the position of having to kind of interpret their idea, and if it wants to pursue it, then becoming the drafter. And that's a hard position to be in if you don't fully understand the commenter's position. So if they are going to recommend specific modifications, then this decretal paragraph would require them to propose the actual red line edits that they want to see. Now the shall there, it's a requirement, but it's not treated as such a harsh requirement, I guess, in practice. If this isn't followed, typically I don't think the commission would disregard the comments, but it's more for our benefit, and it helps the commission a lot in determining what the commenter actually wants. And if the commission agrees to pursue, it gives us a baseline to actually have proposed rule language. To address your first question, so we have an initial comment deadline of May 16th, the public hearing on May 22nd, and then response comments on May 30th. I think we found in past that that's kind of a sweet spot to have hearing comments, to give parties who or stakeholders who respond the opportunity to see what's said at the public hearing, and address that in their response comments if they wish. But the response comments are sometimes the most helpful comments to the commission, because that's where you get a lot of the disagreement between stakeholders. There is no reply comments permitted in this one, but we could, if you want, we can implement a reply comment deadline as well.
Well, thank you for that explanation, and some of it makes sense. But as a commenter, if they want to have real effect, I agree they should include draft language so that their ideas get hopefully incorporated into the rule. But if they don't supply that and we're at a loss as to what they meant, then that just means their comment. We look at it and don't know what to do with it. It has really no effect because we're not going to do anything with it. So the word should or may makes more sense to me than shall, because there should be some recourse for not doing it, which would be, oh, we're going to disregard your comment. But anyway, it just was a word that popped out since I've been having shall and may discussions with Jerry for the last week. It took on maybe some new meaning, but
Commissioner Nyberg, would it help if we said something to the effect of the commission encourages?
yeah, I think because the idea is we're not going to discount the comment, or I don't think we would discount the comment just because they didn't follow through with the shall part.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It's still important, and we will still consider it. It is also helpful to have the language, and so I think maybe encourages might balance that without making it a requirement. But
if you're three in agreement, I already made the edit.
Yeah, we're talking
We're
about
good.
paragraph I, right?
We're good. That's all I had, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I move that we I guess approve the order issuing a notice of proposed rulemaking in docket number 24-00157-UT
as revised.
as revised by one word.
Second.
Second. Okay, thirded. Let's take a vote then. Be very surprising to hear the outcome.
Commissioner Nyberg,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Connell,
Yes.
Commissioner Aguilera.
Aye.
The motion to approve the order in 24-00157 as revised passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lundin. Next up, Mr. Fisk, and the 2346 is the EPE fuel and purchase power adjustment clause. Continuation.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I'll keep the introduction short. So I can get to any questions they may have. There are two orders that are before you. The first is an order that would adopt the recommended decision without any modifications. And that recommended decision would and the final order would approve the continuation of EPE's application, its amended application to continue its fuel clause, the fuel and purchase power cost adjustment clause or fuel clause. The second order that I provided earlier this week was for would adopt the RD but with modifications, and those modifications were suggested by Commissioner O'Connell, and they would be to fully approve the fuel clause, but also require an audit based upon the February 2023 billing error that caused some overcollection, I believe. That would be an audit of the systems and an external audit of the systems and controls around the fuel clause. So that's one difference between two orders. And then the other difference is that Commissioner O'Connell's order would require that EPE prepare for the next EPE general rate case a testimony concerning the rolling 12-month average that's used in the fuel clause. The rolling 12-month average was something that the hearing examiner approved for continued use. It was something that was approved in the previous rate case. But it was a point of contention in this case. Obviously, the purpose of a 12-month rolling average is to smooth out what is quite high volatility in fuel costs, so that it doesn't simply hit all the change and say natural gas prices don't hit all in 1 month, even if there is a rapid increase in prices all in that month, it'd be smoothed out. But some of the, as you know, some of the interveners, the city of Las Cruces, Doñana County, and Mary Lee Souls had objected that the smoothing out mechanism actually delays repayments, credits to customers of over collections. But of course, as staff pointed out, it also reduces the impact of under collections and spreads it out. So, but this, what Commissioner O'Connell has suggested would be that there be a review of that, the value of the smoothing out versus the potential delay in returning over collections. Did I describe that pretty well, Commissioner O'Connell?
Yeah, you did.
Okay,
And,
I'll take any questions.
okay, great. And then again, since I'm the one that was responsible for those modifications on the alternate order, I'll go ahead and explain them. First of all, in no way do I disagree with hearing examiner Hurst's recommended decision. I told her one-on-one, but say it publicly that, you know, she handles some pretty hard to manage cases, and this was one of them. And I really admire and respect how she does her work. Comes through in the recommended decision. There's even a page of sage advice for parties for cases that I would encourage folks to read. So really, it was the first thing is the audit. Two things I was trying to do with that, having had the experience of somebody who's done this kind of work, mistakes happen. And, you know, the recommended decision is this was a mistake that was isolated and addressed. And so no need to address it any further. So I'm proposing an audit just from, again, having made mistakes in my life. I see audit as a a valuable thing. It can help the company see if they've actually implemented controls and processes to limit the odds that a mistake like that's going to leave the building. So it's not intended to be punitive. It's let's just go through it and make sure that things are as they should be, which would be a great outcome, or here's some recommendations for improvements, which is also a great outcome, or if things really aren't going well the way some of the parties had opined in this case, then we'll know that too. So I see that as kind of a low, a more value than cost will be created by doing an audit. So that's why I wanted to include it. And again, it's not intended to be punitive. It's just a learning exercise. And then again, if you go and look at the testimonies that are provided in this case, lots of things that maybe are conjecture provided as fact, wanting to reach back pretty far into the past with issues. I'm hoping that if we have an audit, then that becomes a benchmark for moving forward. So again, regulation being perspective. If we want to raise issues in cases, then the foundation will be this audit. So we know what things were in that moment. Let's move forward from there. So that was the reason for suggesting it. The other is the 12-month rolling average. It's an interesting concept. I mean, if you look at when that was implemented, it was in the 2020-ish timeframe. So we were coming out of COVID. It was near Winter Storm Uri. So I totally can see how that was a good idea at the time. And then, of course, right after that happened, you could get gas in the Permian Basin for free. So attempt to prevent costs from going up ended up being something that prevented costs from going down. And that's just what hedging is, right? You're trading one thing for another, whether you would like the thing you traded away later. That's life. Don't live in the past. So idea is let's get to next rate case. We'll have more data. We'll know if it's working well or not. And then the other reason to want to do it in a rate case is some parties were saying just end it right now. So if you've got this rolling average balance and then suddenly you're going to go to a monthly balance, you're going to create a discontinuity that has to be addressed somehow. I think those type of questions are better answered in a rate case. So not saying we want to get rid of the 12-month rolling average. I just want to look at it, make sure it's really doing what was intended. Think about is something like budget billing or, a better way for people to protect themselves against changing market prices than a 12-month rolling average in the fuel clause. So anyway, it was an issue that was raised. I thought it was an interesting issue. I thought that the testimony where, saying, well, I don't like this thing, so let's eliminate the fuel clause or some other drastic thing, weren't well argued, and again, agree with the recommended decision. So those were the two things I wanted to add to the order as I see them as enhancements to the good work of hearing examiner Hurst. And having said that, I also don't disagree with an order that just adopts the recommended decision.
Thank you, Chair. Also appreciate the alternate order and your basis for proposing that. I agree. There's I agree with the reasons you explained and why these additional revisions are here. And so just wanted to go through some of these in the alternate and just make sure that I'm understanding this correctly. So in paragraph 59, where we're talking about the 12-month rolling average, it says the commission finds that the effectiveness of the FPPCAC is meeting the objective of Rule 550 and should be analyzed and decided in EP's next general rate case. And I just wanted to make sure that the effectiveness part is accurate, which is what we would be looking for.
No, it's funny, as you read that out loud, I was like, I can hear it, but yeah, no, we're keeping the FPPCAC. It's the effectiveness of the 12-month rolling average calculation of the FPPCAC is what,
Okay.
yeah, we're getting on full display my lack of patience for precision. So I appreciate you doing this, Commissioner Aguilera.
Oh, so I'm sorry, was there a change there?
Yeah, I would say it's not effectiveness of the FPPCAC, but effectiveness of the 12-month rolling average calculation of the FPPCAC.
And then also want to clarify that the audit here is not the prudence review that is being requested in the exceptions. Rather, it is, as I understand it, would be an audit to evaluate. Now, this is where I'm going to struggle with the right word, but maybe the accuracy or of the calculation or it's this paragraph 53. And so it says whether the calculation is warranted.
Yeah, I left in the second sentence. Commission finds that neither city nor any other intervener has demonstrated a prudence review is necessary or appropriate at this time. So if we need to do better than that,
No, actually, I was clarifying it just because I felt
say it out loud.
say it out loud.
Oh,
I do think it's clear here. I just
Yeah.
wanted to
Okay.
express
Yeah.
for those listening what what it is. And then wondering whether the calculation is warranted. Same thing as with the last one, whether warranted is what we were looking for, or whether it is more about accuracy or
Oh, yeah.
but maybe it's the same thing.
Well, it's funny because I put in warranted as a softening of what was already there.
Okay.
But you're right. I mean, the idea is just, let's just do an audit to know.
Okay. I guess the only alternate that I would propose is whether it is just and reasonable. But I think warranted could work as well. And yeah, thank you for bringing this additional one. I agree with you that hearing examiner Hurst does an excellent job. Also appreciate her. I don't have anything additional to comment.
Commissioner Nybert. Still on the table is whether we want to add to the RD or not. And then if we do want to add to the RD, did you have any comments on the alternate order?
Just one question on paragraph D of the order. There's 2 blanks. Have those been filled in, or are they intended to be blank?
Commissioner Nybert, those would need to be filled in. First, there's a blank for when, if the commission decides to adopt this order and require an independent external audit, I think that the commission would probably want to see a proposal and that a number of auditing firms have been contacted for projected costs and a description of the audit. I mean, which would be as per the description here, but the auditing firms are often more specific about what they do. And so I don't know how much time would be required for that, 20, 30 days.
I'd be, generous with the time here, just because like I say, this isn't intended to be punitive.
So
I
can put in.
I would suggest 2 months from now.
Okay. I'll fill in whatever date that
And
is.
then I did like the idea of having staff review the proposal because like, as you said, Mr. Fisk, there were lots of, I think, decent ideas of what questions the auditor should be asking in the case. So just, make sure it's designed up front that here's an audit that would satisfy staff that it was legit and ask the right questions. So I did like the idea, but then again, I'd say let's give staff 45 days from when the thing comes out, because don't want to punish staff either.
So, so would that be April 30th? The end of April that you would want the EPE to file?
This will get issued tomorrow. So 2 months from tomorrow.
You don't want to give them full months.
Oh, okay. So yeah, end of April is what you're saying,
Yeah,
April 30th.
and then you change the second sentence to give staff what? You said 45 days?
Yeah, so that'd be June 18th.
So April 30th and June 18th, is that correct?
I just eyeballed a month and a half for the 45 days.
And those are weekdays? Let me check.
Yeah.
Okay.
18th is a Wednesday and the 30th is a Wednesday also.
Are those audits pretty quick, easily done, or are they very intensive, requiring a lot of man hours and a lot of examination of records?
Commissioner Nyberg, I'm not sure. I would think that an audit of only 12 months that covers specifically the systems and controls around the fuel clause and how that gets flowed through to the billing, which is apparently what actually happened here, is the connection between fuel clause and the billing where there was an error made. I would think there'd be a fairly limited audit. It wouldn't be like an audit of financial statements or something like that. But I don't know offhand like how much it'd be. And that's why I think if we get proposals, the commission might decide on seeing the proposals that these are really, that they're quite expensive. I think that's why we would need these proposals to find out.
Should we have some language that would allow El Paso Electric to come back to us if it's more onerous than what I'm imagining at this moment?
Well,
Because that's the difference between the modification and the order, right?
I'm sorry, the difference between the what and the
The
order?
modified order versus the original order.
That's correct. And I would say what we could do is put some language in here because we're already requiring EPE to come back with a proposal, including proposed auditing firms and projected costs. And we could put something in here that says, the commission may consider, based on, that and then staff's recommendations regarding the audit. Could say something like the commission will consider, the various recommendations, including, possibly not requiring an audit if it's too costly, something like that.
Yeah, I'm just a little concerned that audits generally take on a life of their own, and that may be fine. That may be what we need, but
You could include requirement that the commission approve the proposed audit before anything moves forward. Because then we'll have the proposal, we'll have a staff report, and then we can choose whether to proceed or not.
I could just add that the commission shall review the EPE's proposal and staff's recommendations to in, to determine, and will determine whether and how, and if so, how to proceed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we need to give them some wiggle room if it's more complicated than what we anticipate.
And like I said, there are some good ideas in here, but there are also some that's like, whoa. So gotta check on that. Expect. Any other?
Yes, sir.
It just very, very small changes on paragraph 14. Mr. Fisk got 12-month written out was changed to 12-month numerical. They're in quotes, and I think they need to be reverted back or included in brackets. That's paragraph 14.
Paragraph 14. Mhm.
Yeah, I
Actually,
think it was like
I did change that to the number, so I can change them all back to the,
no, just those two because they're in quotations or
oh, that's true. I did a find or replace,
Yeah.
sorry, that's worse than AI.
or just add brackets around it. Sorry,
Okay.
that's a very small one.
That's a good catch.
Okay, so I will move for adoption of the proposed order as edited in this meeting. The modification as modified.
Second,
Any more discussion? Mr. Fisk, are you clear on?
Yes, and thank you.
So seeing none, I think we're ready for,
Commissioner Nyberg,
Yes,
Commissioner O'Connell,
yes,
Commissioner Aguilera.
I
The motion to approve the order as modified in 230046 UT passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
great, thank you. And then I'm not sure that we have a whole lot more to go, but I think I am sure we should take a short break.
Okay, thank you.
Don't go anywhere, Mr. Fisk, you're next. And
once it's to the.
How long is the break?
yeah, no, we'll be back at let's say 5 till noon. Okay, it is 11:55. Where we're at on the agenda is discussion and potential action. So we've got Mr. Fisk. My understanding is you're gonna do you have a presentation on upcoming community solar workshop?
Yes, that is correct, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. So on March 5th, starting at 10 a.m. Here at our offices, and also by Zoom, there will be an initial informational workshop in 24258 UT, which is the docket that the commission opened for broad consideration of any basically any proposed changes to amendments to the community solar rule. The community solar rule has been in place for a couple of years, and it was recently amended by the commission, but only in a few areas, primarily the area of allowing the cap to be raised, the statewide capacity cap to be raised for further for additional 300 megawatts of community solar projects in a future solicitation of applications. So this would be to consider amendments in all areas. We've had we actually received earlier last year, we received recommendations, informal recommendations from various participants as to different things they would like to see in the rule. We've learned a lot. The commission has learned, and I've learned, and people involved, staff has learned about things that could be changed in the rule. Incline, as our program administrator, has provided their own recommendations regarding better ways to run more specific provisions for the rule and such, going in a different direction than the rule. And of course, the recent tariff matter, which is still pending but should be done very soon, in 2371 UT, there were specifically issues that the commission decided in that final order would be left for consideration in the rulemaking. So what we put together, Arthur O'Donnell and I put together this agenda after meeting with Commissioner Aguilera, and other people have been involved, including Miguel Perez from our staff. Talked about what will we talk about that at this first workshop. This first workshop will have to be I think the commission will want to do some planning today for the first workshop, but also the workshop itself will be for planning as well, because Arthur and I recommend that there be, we don't have a certain number, but more than one workshop, because this is the informal stage, the workshop stage, before you get to the issuing a NOPR. I think what we'll want to do is have a proposed rule that's issued with the NOPR that's a very good comprehensive rule with all the types of things that the commission might want to consider, so that when we move to the formal comment period, the comments will be about things that are already proposed, and we won't, it'll be more detailed and focused. So I would recommend more than one workshop. This would be an initial one. We don't have to decide today how many there will be, but I think at the workshop, we'll want to decide what needs to come first. What are issues that are important to decide first in terms of what we're going to propose rule, and that could include things that the commission might want to have go into place earlier than other parts. The way that we're thinking of the rulemaking now is that it'll be one rulemaking, and then there'll be a final order somewhere down the road that will apply to the next 300 megawatts of projects, because there are certainly things that would be unfair to apply to the current 200 megawatts because they've already been selected and relied upon certain things. But for instance, one thing we've included as an issue potentially applicable to the current 200 megawatts of projects would be requiring consolidated billing. That would be billing that the utility would include the subscriber organizations charges on the same bill. That's something that more and more it seems to be, we've learned over the past couple of years, very important to subscriber organizations, and our rule, I don't remember if our rule prohibits it or it just doesn't require it. But that's something that could be applied to this 200 megawatts. But most things could only apply to the next 300 megawatts, because things that applied, for example, to the selection process, that's already gone through for the first 200 megawatts. And things that affect the economics of projects would have to be for the next 300 megawatts. But it could be possible the commission would want to consider things like variances from the current rule. If the commission decides early on that we're probably going to change this in the rule and let's do a variance now, for instance, for consolidated billing. That's just an example. I don't think there are too many items like that that the commission might want to do something about sooner while the rulemaking is pending, but that's possible. And that's something maybe to consider at the first workshop. So I have in front of me the draft presentation agenda for the workshop, and it would begin with Incline talking about where we currently stand, and I also provided you with their Incline's January program update as to where things stand. Today there's going to be a groundbreaking. I think Valencia County. So there are projects that are starting construction, other facilities. So I'm looking at on the presentation agenda, rundown of recent variance requests. Whenever we do a rulemaking, if there have been variance requests that we've granted with regard to a particular rule, then of course you had a variance request before the commission today. That those often point out issues to consider for possible changes to a rule or possibly making things more specific. Miguel, I'll present on that. Miguel would be presenting on solar bill credit calculations. Miguel was tremendous help in coming up with the actual exhibit to the final order in the tariffs case, which actually gave you the breakdown of how the solar bill credit numbers should be, the solar bill credits should be calculated. And then Arthur would give an update on the federal Solar for All grants and what the status is of that funding, because that could affect the projects. And by the way, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I do have, hopefully they are present. Arthur is present for questions. I have question and answer questions. And we also have representatives or a representative of Incline. Moving on in the agenda though, B would be Incline providing a presentation. I provided the commission with Incline's recommendations, which were made early last year. They still hold as their recommendations. Of course, Incline has a great deal of experience with our program and with programs in other states as well. Then moving on to C, I won't go through all this detail. Utility stakeholder panel discussions, and that's something we might want to give a heads up to what we would like certain people, certain participants to do if we want them to prepare something for this workshop. What the notice that has gone out so far to the public and to all of the program participants is just our general notice that there's going to be a workshop on this date and it's about this rulemaking. And if we want to give anyone some specific and any particular utilities or other participants, some particular assignments as to why don't you prepare something to start the conversation in this area or that area. We can do that. We actually have, since Incline frequently interacts with participants, they gave us some recommendations as to potential participants to ask to do a brief presentation in certain areas. And then I guess with that, I'll take any questions.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I mean, you answered my questions in your overview. It sounds like we will at least identify RFP lessons learned, and then I thought the working group for energy efficiency rulemaking worked really well. So what I see is an agenda that will seed working group discussions, and then hopefully we can get similar to what we just voted on, energy efficiency rule, a solid rule to propose in a NOPR. So appreciate the thoughtfulness of the design of this. I also recognize this is at least 4 hours worth of workshop, but it's complicated, big topic. So understand the length too. Commissioners, did you have any questions or comments? And then just, I'll give you my last question and then we'll hear everybody else. But the last one is concluding. Could you tell us what it is you're asking us to do today?
So the commission doesn't need to take any, I had this on for discussion and potential action, but I don't actually have a proposed order. The commission wouldn't have to even take a vote to you know, if this is sufficient, we can go ahead and send it out as it is. Because we've already sent a notice of the workshop. This should just be structuring the workshop. So if the commission wants us, this is something that this more detailed draft is something that we would be sending out to the community solar service list because those are the participants and the utilities. And so they would know, you know, the sort of structure of this. If the commission wants us also to include in that message to the participants that they should, that certain of them should prepare something presentation wise, we could do that. Or if you want something other than what's in this content, to go out to the participants, then please let us know. Otherwise, it would just go out as it is.
Okay. Well, reformatted, but yeah.
What was that, Mr. Chairman? Is it
Reformatted me.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, in terms of so there's this panel discussion in terms of getting the panelists for the discussion. Can you talk about the logistics of that and how far you've gotten there?
Yes, Commissioner Aguilera, we haven't contacted anyone. All that's gone out is the notice that there will be this workshop. And since we have some time, what we'll be doing is if the commission wanted to decide who we'd like to have, we have a list that Incline has provided of people that they regularly interact with, who they think would be, you know, good people that provide presentations on certain issues. And so we could go ahead and contact them and just ask them to prepare something to basically start a discussion on certain issues. I'm looking for that email right now. Let me see. Alex, are you, I don't know if Commissioner, you want to hear from Incline?
That's okay. We don't have to talk, I think, necessarily about the panelists here. I just was wondering kind of where we were and on that. And so I'm also happy to, you know, work with you and Incline and to think about you know, which invitations to send, and then which we should probably do soon.
Yes.
And yeah, I think that's it on that. Is we can talk about that, and just want to make sure that we're not delaying that too much beyond today.
Yes, Commissioner Aguilera, I think that'd be a good idea if, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Nyberg, if you, would like to, just, have me, and Arthur and then continue to work with Commissioner Aguilera, to decide, to whom, when we send this, message out to, the program participants, we can decide who exactly we want to ask to talk about certain subjects. They would just be quick introductory, um, to introduce the issues, as per what's in here in the agenda, the issues that are raised there, and potentially other issues if they're related. But then in terms of creating working groups, we would do that at the workshop. I think that's the way to go there, because you need people to volunteer.
Thanks for that invitation, but that's what I saw when I read the agenda, is have a good enough workshop that we have good working groups, and that'll be a self-selected panel. Commissioner Nybert, did you have anything to add? Yeah, I believe you're itching to go to Berlin for a ribbon cutting, so that's ironically. So any other questions for exactly, that's right. Any other, I mean, I hope you know that what you've heard is good design. Let's get working on it. Sounds like we should notice and get the paperwork out quickly, so.
Okay, yes, so Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I'll work with Commissioner Aguilera and Arthur and other members of our little team, and we'll get something out. We'll file it with a notice on the record. It'll be this agenda, but with some more detail. And I'll file on the record and also provide that will get served on other participants.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is Mr. Cameron, and I think this is just kind of a update, right?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes. What we're talking about here is the scheduling informational session for seasonal readiness. It's docket 24-00123 UT. As you may recall, last year around this time, at an open meeting, the commission talked about doing this. That was in February of 2024. In early April of 2024, there was an initial order filed setting up that workshop, and then that workshop or that session happened on April 19th. And the idea is, with summer coming, and the obvious necessity for reliable utility service during peak demand periods, the commission opened this docket last year to evaluate the readiness of PNM, SPS, and EPE to meet summer energy needs. So trying to get ahead of that again this year and set something up. And the possibilities, as I have spoken to Jen to find out when commissioners are available, it looks like April 16th or April 23rd are the two best dates in mid-April, and anytime between 9 and 5, I guess, on April 16th, and then in the afternoon on April 23rd. And I think last year it went from 1:30 to 4. And we did this last year by a signal signature order. I think it's appropriate to do it that way this year as well. So we don't necessarily need to figure out the date right now. Although if we can, it gives an early heads up to everybody, including the entities, as to when they should be ready to present something.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it looks like Jennifer Baca has beat you to it, but she put a hold for both of those days, so I would just say sooner the better. Yeah, they're both Wednesdays. Either day, yeah. So yeah, for utilities, there was value in what you did last year, so we're gonna ask you to do it again.
I would say, Mr. Chair, if I may, that one change I propose that we make for this year is to make it clear that we would like for the utilities to file something into the docket as well. When I went back and looked at this docket from last year, I'm not sure if I was handling this last year. I don't remember the informational sessions in particular, but I noticed that EPE had not filed anything into the docket. I'm assuming they were here and did a presentation, but just didn't file it. So that would be one suggested change to the order for this year, is to make it a little bit clearer we would like something filed into the docket as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. What I remember was we had a PowerPoint from everybody, so I just didn't make it in there. Any questions?
No questions, just thank you for bringing this. I actually was thinking it's that time of year, and then I was gonna inquire about this and I saw it on the agenda, so thank you.
No problem. So April 16th,
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
okay,
Sooner the better.
morning or afternoon?
I'm my best self in the morning.
So you said. Okay, we'll do the morning then. So April 16th at 9, and this is just kind of the informal announcement, but there'll be an order reflecting that at some point pretty soon.
Thank you.
Thanks. That's it for me on that.
Good. No, thank you, Mr. Cameron. Next up, Ms. Mares with a legislative update. Things are happening fast is what sounds like. Yeah, you gotta push the.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. As a former auditor used to say, we have 31 days of awesomeness left. Today's the last day for introduction of legislation. I know, so we're almost halfway there, almost. Just to let you know, give you an update on our priorities, SB 109, PRC and supporting agency is on the Senate calendar today. And we are hopeful that it will be heard on the floor today. And if it passes, then we move on to the House. Our SB 9, which is our Pipeline Safety Act, civil penalty fee cap, that passed its first committee and now it's in Senate Judiciary. So we're just waiting for that to get scheduled. Our SB 143, which is creating our utility oversight fund, has passed its first committee and now it's in Senate Finance. There are several bills that have been introduced in this session that include rulemaking timelines that they're unreasonably tight. And this is going to make it difficult for the PRC to meet these deadlines. However, I am monitoring these bills and I'm also working with the sponsors to ensure that the PRC isn't unduly impacted, but also ensuring that the PRC can advance the agency's goals effectively. So we're just staying in contact and trying to be a part of any solutions that we can come to. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Yeah, thank you for that update. And then, I mean, with just my comment on the rulemaking timelines is, yeah, it's hard for us to meet the deadlines, but if we don't write the rule well, the real impact is the goal of the law, because having the ability to write a good rule means we're going to land on hitting the objective of the law faster. So it's one of those shortcuts never are kind of concepts for me. Pay attention to that. And then, I was looking, quite a few people in the agency have been producing FIRs. And so thank you to them too. Any questions or comments?
Thank you for staying up to date on all of these legislative efforts and for making sure that we're up to date as well.
Welcome. Thank you.
And then, so Ms. Mars's update on SB 109 is why we don't have a chief of staff in the room right now. Because I think she's over at the Senate right now. So anyway, we won't have that from her today, but just wanted to note that, her 2-year anniversary as chief of staff happened this week. So that was a nice milestone to recognize. And then just rolling on through communications with commissioners. The three of us are going to be at NARUC next week. That's a big conference convening of legislators from all over the country, including some FERC commissioners will be there. I'm looking forward to going, just check in with some of our peers in other states. In addition to NARUC, there's lots of things that happen adjacent to that. So like Sunday, I'm going to be at this Power Shift conference. It is the legal scholars that write papers about things like RTOs and competitive markets and those type of things are going to have a conversation Sunday. So I was going to go to that on Sunday. And then we've got Western Conference of Commissioners on Monday afternoon, so that we get to talk more directly about things that affect each other in our neighboring states. So looking forward to that. Also, I'll be meeting with SPP when I'm out there. So anyway, it's a action-packed trip. Looking forward to it. And then ironically, one of my duties at that conference is I'm going to be moderating a panel on community solar. So one of the things I expect is going to come up is things like consolidated billing. And so if I learn anything at that panel, it's kind of nice. We're going to have a workshop right afterwards. So I'll be happy to share that. But other than just NARUC, and then we've got busy couple of weeks. Busy week after that, going to Farmington, going to have this community solar workshop. Looking forward to all that. And also looking forward to showing off my swell New Mexico pin to the NARUC commissioners to make them jealous. Yeah. So thank you for that, Commissioner Nybert.
Yeah, and I'll be at NARUC as well. So yeah, a lot of activities going on. There's one item that I wanted to start talking about, which is how to handle situations where we might need to submit, for example, some kind of filing to FERC. This situation has come up for me a few times with EDAM and Markets Plus. Might want to submit something separately from the relevant committees. So that would be the BOSSER and the MSC. It seems, and so I've done it in the past as a single commissioner, just because I thought it was easier. But there might be times where we want to weigh in as a full commission, and the problem though is timing between when something is filed, for example, at FERC, and then there's a comment deadline, and maybe I don't know about it for a few days, and then a meeting passes anyway. There's a timing element there where we need to act quickly, and so I don't think we need to solve that today, but I'll work with General Counsel to talk about that, so that hopefully we can, whenever we need to make some kind of filing. The other thing that came up was like a response to DOE on like the transmission corridors, for example. The same thing, I ended up just submitting comments on my own behalf, but it would be nice if there's something that is not controversial and we're all on the same page about, to be able to comment as a full commission.
Yeah, thanks for highlighting that. And that's just been something on the to-do list, but I agree with you.
Well, hopefully there'll be some legislation passed soon that can help out in that regard. And certainly that's part of the intention of the legislation that's pending. I look forward to heading to Belen and seeing the solar community solar facility that's going up and being dedicated today, and look forward to joining my fellow commissioners at NARUC. They don't know this, but it'll be up to them to get me where I need to go, because I'm kind of the blind person, and so they'll be having to guide me. And I appreciate the guidance they've given me thus far to get engaged and get signed up for the newcomers program that they have, as well as getting me introduced around. So I look forward to that. We do have a busy couple months. I didn't know it could get busier, but it looks like it's getting busier from my end based on all the things that are getting added to the calendar. So it's certainly been a challenge for me, and still drinking out of the fire hose, so to speak. But I appreciate your continued patience with me, and really enjoy being on the commission and working with you and with people in New Mexico. I can tell them that they're well served with Commissioner Aguilera and Commissioner the chair with their service to the state of New Mexico. And it's certainly I know it's certainly a great weight off the shoulders of many of my friends down the road that are in the roundhouse right now, that the commission seems to be working as they had envisioned years ago when they took it from an elective position to a appointed position, and it's because of you guys that is giving them that comfort level. And I think we're seeing it with respect to our legislation. I think we're seeing it with respect to hopefully getting some traction on the facilities that we're in, and hopefully will be in. And certainly was pleased to see the new facility yesterday, and look forward to making that facility a home for the commission, and talking about maybe expansion into better space in Albuquerque and doing some things like that. So it's an exciting time for the Public Regulation Commission, exciting time for the state, and certainly the issues that we face are affecting every person in the state. And we have big challenges, but we have good minds up here to help us, as well as the entire staff that really does the heavy lifting. So it's been my pleasure to join you.
Well, thank you. Want to leave that as unmodified comments, so I would say we should adjourn while we're ahead, right? So anyway, yeah, we're adjourned, and for those of you that are here, you can probably smell it. We have some 2-year anniversary refreshments, but guest of honor is not here, so go ahead. Have at it.
Go ahead and eat her.